Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode. This is your host, and our today's story is Mother Hall. Before we begin, please hit that like button if you have not already so you can be notified when new episodes are out. Also, be sure to share your thoughts about this episode in the comments below. Let's get started. Once upon a time, there was a poor widow who had a little daughter named Snow White. Now, Snow White wasn't just any girl. Oh no. She was as beautiful as her name. Her skin was like fresh, fallen snow. Her lips were like berries, and the raven hair cascaded down her back in thick waves. The only thing that could have made her more beautiful were her eyes, for they were as blue as the sky on the clearest of days and shone with an inner light. Unfortunately, Snow White's beauty was wasted on her mother, for she was as vain as the day was long. Every morning she would look into the mirror and say, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And every morning the mirror would reply, "You are the fairest in the land, my queen." But this didn't stop her from being envious of Snow White's beauty, which only seemed to grow by the day. Meanwhile, the girl grew up and became known throughout the kingdom for her beauty and grace. And soon enough, men began vying for her hand in marriage. One day, the queen received a letter from the king next door asking for Snow White's hand in marriage. The queen was furious. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter marrying another man's son and becoming a princess elsewhere. So she went straight to the mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You are fair, but Snow White is fairer still." The queen threw herself onto the ground in frustration. How could she destroy her own daughter? At that moment, a strange idea came to her mind. It was so dark and devious that even the birds outside took fright and flew away. She ordered her servants to prepare a beautiful gown and a crown fit for a queen. Then she went to see Snow White, who was picking flowers in the garden. "My dear," said the queen, kneeling before her, "I've had a wonderful idea. Why don't you put on this dress and crown so we can go to the market together?" Snow White looked at her mother in confusion, but agreed nonetheless. And together they left the castle. As soon as they stepped foot into the marketplace, people gasped. They had never seen anyone so beautiful. As they walked through the crowd, the people parted like the Red Sea, and the queen basked in the attention. When they reached the center of town, she told Snow White to wait for her, while she went to speak to the mayor. "Don't move an inch," she said, "until I come back." Then she disappeared into the crowd. The girl waited patiently for a while, but then she noticed that everyone around her was pointing and whispering. And it was then that she realized why her mother had brought her to the market. All this time, the queen had been watching from afar. And when she saw how people reacted to her daughter's beauty, she was filled with rage. She wanted Snow White dead. She quickly made her way to an apothecary and asked him to make a poison for her. The apothecary was a good friend of hers, and he knew exactly what she wanted. He gave her a small vial filled with a red liquid and handed it to her. "Be careful, my queen," he said, "for this poison has no antidote. One drop on the tongue and it will send the victim into a death-like slumber that will last for 100 years. The queen thanked him and rushed back to the marketplace, where Snow White was still waiting. "Mother, are you almost done?" she called out. The queen pretended to be surprised. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my dear. I completely forgot you were here. I want you to drink this." Snow White looked at her mother in confusion, but the queen insisted. "Please, my dear, I insist." Seeing that her mother was insistent, Snow White opened the vial and drank the contents. As soon as the liquid touched her tongue, she felt a strange tingling sensation spread throughout her body. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. She wanted to move, but her arms and legs felt heavy as lead. Then she collapsed right there in the marketplace. People screamed and ran away, thinking that Snow White was some kind of monster. The queen watched with amusement until the marketplace was empty. Then she returned to the castle with Snow White in her arms. When the servants saw Snow White lying lifeless on the floor, they assumed that she was dead. So they carried her into the royal bedroom and laid her down on the bed. Then they closed the door and locked it from the outside. Meanwhile, the queen went to the mirror and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" The mirror replied, "You are the fairest in the land, my queen." At last, the queen was satisfied. Now, as it turned out, the poison had indeed put Snow White into a death-like slumber. But she wasn't dead. In fact, she was sleeping so soundly that she began to dream. And in her dream, she met a handsome prince who was riding through the forest on his white horse. When he heard Snow White singing, he followed the sound and found her lying on the bed. When he leaned in to kiss her, she woke up. "Who are you?" she asked. "And why do I feel like I've been sleeping for 100 years?" The prince told her everything that had happened, and Snow White was shocked. She couldn't believe that her own mother had tried to kill her. "But how am I still alive?" she asked. The prince shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe it was meant to be." Then they heard footsteps approaching, and Snow White hid under the covers. The prince quickly hid her there with the help of a magic spell, and when the queen entered the room, she saw nothing. "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" she asked. The mirror replied, "You are fair, but Snow White is fairer still." The queen threw herself to the ground in frustration. How could her own daughter be more beautiful than she was? Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. Well, well, sister. Fancy meeting you here." The queen turned around and gasped when she saw Snow White standing in front of her, more beautiful than ever. Then the prince revealed himself as well, and together they confronted the evil queen. In the end, the queen was banished from the kingdom, and Snow White and the prince lived happily ever after. Once upon a time, there was a poor widow who had a little daughter named Snow White. That's all for this episode, folks. If you enjoyed this fairy tale, please leave a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also, be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any new episodes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.